Cross. Hi, my name is Anna, and I'm a singer.
Hi, my name is Peyton, and I'm a dancer.
And today, what are we doing today?
Today, we are back with another set of Kingdom reactions, this time to episode 5, and the second set of round 2 performances.
Yes, so this week we are reacting to Kingdom episode 5, nothing new. In case you missed it last week, Reborn is the teams paired up, switched songs, and then remade the song that they chose to perform. As always, before we start, a few disclaimers for this video. 1, mentioned it last week, but basically we had some delayed copyright issues with our Kingdom episode 2 and 3 reactions, so as a result the performances are going to be edited even more, so like transparency, and I added a giant strawberry on top of it. So we're assuming that you've already seen the performances and watched the episode before you're watching this reaction. If not, go do that so that the performances you can like understand what's happening on screen. Yeah.
Second disclaimer, and this one is new. We usually say it at the end, but we realized that not everyone watched our videos all the way to the end, so we thought we'd put it here. Just a friendly reminder, please be respectful and polite in the comments. This is a competition show, things can get heated. We all want our faves to do well. As multi-stans, this is really hard for us. But we just want to make sure that our comment section stays positive. It's totally fine to have opinions, to want to hype up your faves. We encourage that. Please share your opinions. Please hype up your faves. But we don't want fan wars here. Please be respectful of all of the groups. They are all working incredibly hard and doing the best, and they're showing fantastic performances each week, and we want to make sure that that's recognized. So stay positive, stay respectful.
You can bring someone up without bringing someone else down.
True.
Disclaimer number 3. As always, we did not watch the episode beforehand. Reasons for that. The performances should stand on their own. We shouldn't need a rehearsal package to get the explanation for everything.
And in a similar vein of thought, we also won't pause the performances while we are watching because, again, they should be enjoyed from start to finish as if they were a live performance where we can't stop, rewind, replay. We will rewatch them before we make comments.
And we will watch the episode once we are done with this reaction video. Next is we react to the performances in episode order to our understanding, so how Mnet uploads it on their YouTube channel. So this week it is ATEEZ, then BTOB, then Stray Kids.
And finally, as always, there are timestamps in a pinned comment down below so that you can jump around to the different reactions, different comments, and let's go! So for the first performance today, we'll be watching ATEEZ, and they switched with iKON, so they'll be doing Rhythm Ta, The Awakening of Summer. Let's go.
The Awakening of Summer.
I'm intrigued.
Is that an eye?
Or is it like a... Oh, it is an eye. Oh!
Is this like a museum heist?
Well, it said Precipitate Art Dance Music. So are they like gonna start a rebellion with how they're dressed?
Oh.
Definitely. It's like a heist or something, yeah. I think one of ATEEZ's strengths, ATEEZ is able to convey their storyline in a very like uncomplicated manner. Like there was never a moment in my mind where I didn't understand the storyline. There might have been moments where I was like, oh, how is that gonna play into it? But it was always answered and cleared up, and by the end of it I was like, I completely understand what you're going for. Because yes, they are connecting the stages, like the end when Hongjoong puts on the Holotease hat and like takes the time turner from the first performance, but the stage itself could be contained within the singular storyline. I think that's like really important, especially in a competition show like this. So I really enjoyed their use of the set, and I would say it is a set over props. And the distinction, the nuance is very slight. A set is something that you interact with and that you can use, but it's more used to set the scene, tell the story, sort of like progress it along, whereas a prop is usually held and also dominates like the scene or the story or the dance. And I feel like this airs more towards set because so much of like the actual dancing and the actual storytelling was done separate from it, with what was on stage used as a background, and they were really focusing on their dancing and on their performing. There are a couple, like the mask I might air more towards prop because it would become the focus, or like the rope during Sunny's part, but still, like overall it's a set, and they're using it in a very smart way where it's able to help them tell the story and create the scene, but the stage and the performance itself is focused on their dancing and on their singing and on their performing and telling the story through their facials, which also is another strength that ATEEZ has. And I've talked about this in past ATEEZ reactions that we've done. ATEEZ's stage presence is no joke. Having seen them live, it's overwhelming, and it comes through the camera too, especially in a performance like this where they're focusing on that. About the dance. Okay, so I didn't have time to break down the whole dance because we do try to be fair and give equal amounts of time to every group for like how long we take notes. This choreography is basically totally different, especially in the choruses, so couldn't break down the whole thing, but just a couple of thoughts. Even though they had not used the original choreography and like the iconic like this move, I didn't really see that. I did see gestures that I recognized from watching the members perform Rhythm Ta. During Seonghwa's rap at the very beginning, there was a moment where he like went down like this, and I could literally see Kim Jin-won doing it. So even though it's a different section, it's like similar gestures, and you could tell they'd studied the icon stage. I also really liked the choreography on the rope that Sunny did, and it is choreography. Like, he's on his back and it's supposed to look like he's climbing, but the way that he's twisting and like kind of turning upside down and stuff, it looks like mimicking what an aerial artist would do on silks when they're climbing and how they would flip upside down. And so I really enjoyed that moment, and also thought it was smart that they had him on the ground instead of actually trying to climb the rope, because I'm sure the idea crossed his mind. Last comment. So the chorus, again, it was definitely different, and it was way more grounded than the original, which really took me off guard at first because I think this is a very iconic song, and so I was going into it thinking like hype, but the storyline itself brings it down and makes it more grounded. But the more you watch it, the more I was starting to appreciate the way that it was conveying their storyline, because it's so aggressive and it's so like take charge, so dominating, which really fits with their concept. And so at first I was kind of like, wait, what? But then the more I watched it, I was like, oh wait, no, I like this. Overall, I really enjoyed it, especially the more and more I watched it. Anna's turn.
Hi, so time for my comments. First, I already kind of said in the reaction, I'm guessing that their thing for the rest of the Kingdom performances is like referencing, sampling classical music pieces, which I'm not upset about. I find it really interesting. What is it? Like the frantic, a lot of movement strings add this sort of like suspense build-up feeling, which in the certain points in the stage when they use it, makes sense. Also on the instrumental, like you can see the transition of the instrumental for their storyline as it moves. So like in the first verse, it's essentially the bass line is the focus that you're hearing. It's like a deep synth bass that like has pitch to it. It has pitch to it. But the singing over it is, Seonghwa's is definitely like whisper singing, very airy. And Yeosang's parts are too. But the rest of them, it's not really whisper singing. It's much less aggressive than I know they can usually sing and could be used. It wouldn't be out of place. So I'm like, oh, that was interesting. But it also makes sense because it's like the first verse is their plan hasn't really been put into action yet. It's still sort of like prep stages. And then the transition of like when Sunny is doing the rope climbing part, then like everything is going into action and movement, and that starts with like a more Latin instrumental coming in, like the trumpet horn sounds that you hear. With the storyline too, you transition into like the rebellion is really happening. Second half of the second verse, one thing that really stuck out to me is an electric guitar line plays during that section. And electric guitar is usually like associated with rock, so more of a rock vibe. And rock music is usually associated with like rebellion, which they're about to do by the end of the song. So all of like the slight music choices, obviously there's many more layers than what I'm talking about, but I'm highlighting a few things, are very good for the storyline and the story that it's telling. Another one of my comments was also how their storytelling has been really good on Kingdom. My sort of Ashua thing, is like kind of like yours. First watch, it's very jarring because it is different from the Rhythm Ta that you know. And like, I get it because that's the whole point of this round, is like reborn, make it in your own style. And they did that very well. It's just first time, it was really jarring. Second time watching it, I was like, oh no, I'm like vibing with this more. I think it's because like in Rhythm Ta, you usually expect it to be like a huge hype party, by the end of the song. And it's not a party because their storyline, but it is interesting how they like took that to fit their story, because like huge party, like all these people are coming together, banding together in the storyline. By the end, everyone is banded together for the rebellion that's happening. So it still tracks, right? Right.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Right. Okay. So yeah, that's all I had to say. Next. Okay, so second performance of this week's episode is BTOB doing Stray Kids Backdoor. No extra title, it's just Backdoor. But I've also been super excited for this. Alright, let's go!
Let's begin, shall we? They still show so much personality in this. From a storytelling, like character perspective, you could tell that within the rock group that they're forming, they had like chosen different personality archetypes. Like I felt like that was really apparent when Minhyuk like slammed the door in the face of the camera. But even then, their own like personalities came through and had been incorporated into their characters. Like they first show Changsub and he's on the couch with the guitar, and I thought it was so comical how his goofy self would come out, because instead of being sort of like relaxed on the couch, he was like planked straight across it, like up from where you would normally be sitting. And then he dropped down. I was like, you're so silly. I love it. I love that this is staying in here even when you're doing this like harder concept. Especially because in their last two performances, they were doing more like sentimental things, so they had to be more solemn. This time I feel like was the first time we could really see that side of them come out. From a storytelling perspective, very clear. It was clear from the first moment. We were like, backstage? Oh, okay. And they were like getting their makeup done and like getting on their costumes and all of that sort of stuff. So it's really recognizable, which again, good for a performance competition when you're trying to tell a story and entertain an audience. Especially because I feel like either as performers or just as fans of K-pop groups, everyone's seen this sort of like setting before in like backstage videos. So you recognize it and you're able to easily follow the story. It doesn't take a lot of your concentration to be like, what's happening? You can just focus on their performance. Choreography wise, just like a couple of things. Like the choreography was really concentrated in that last chorus. Most of the song was kind of going back and forth between the like dressing rooms of them. But obviously they had kept that like hallmark iconic like backdoor choreography when they're going through the door, and the dancers had created that too, like the iconic one. Again, even in that final dance break, which was new choreography, I liked how it felt very like party concert-esque, because they did have set choreography that they were doing, but they still had the freedom to sort of break out, like when Peniel throws the water, when Minhyuk grips his shirt, like they were still showing their individuality, and it felt like being at a BTOB concert. I've never been to a BTOB concert, but I've seen the video, so it felt like being at a BTOB concert. But also, like my final comment, it's sort of a long one, I do think rearranging it and keeping it more upbeat was a really good idea, because I feel like a lot of people will expect BTOB in a round that's called Reborn, like do it into your own style, to do a ballad or like a sentimental song. And yes, that is part of who BTOB is as a group, but if you look at their discography over the last like almost 10 years, like they've done so many styles, they do dance, like they've had all sorts of, okay, yeah, thank you. But they've done a lot of styles, and rather than putting themselves into that box and letting themselves be kept in that box of like vocalists that only do sad ballads, they focused more on other like trademarks of the BTOB style, the BTOB colors, and incorporating that into a fun performance. So they kept their personalities in it. They kept the amazing like vocals and harmonies and all of that in it. They had Peniel with his more like storytelling sort of rap that rolls into Minhyuk's Spitfire rap. So they were still keeping the hallmarks that make BTOB who they are, but they were doing it in a more like upbeat way and showing like our colors can sort of be seen across a spectrum rather than in one specific style, which I thought was really ingenious. And like their performance experience really shined through this performance, and I was having a great time. So Anna's turn.
I said that I've been like really excited for this performance because like Backdoor is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Stray Kids song. So I was so excited. And like Peyton said too, like everything about the storyline was so easy to track and follow, like right from the start, literally right away. I was like, oh my gosh, vocalizations. And then you can hear the things like we were talking about, like the sound equipment testing being set up, and then like the testing of the instruments, you can kind of hear like sound check happening. The more rock style arrangement was fun too. Like there are a lot of key sounds from the original Backdoor that are remaining in the song, just like the knock sounds on the door. And then the sort of like ticking sounds that you hear in the bridge, those are all remaining. But obviously like a more rock arrangement with like the really intense electric guitar happening in like the whole song basically, which honestly I wish I could have heard it a little bit louder. But I feel like for the past couple of episodes of Kingdom, they've actually been changing the mixing levels of the audio, like music versus the vocals, so the voice is like coming out more clearly. So like I'm not upset about it too much. I just really like electric guitar. I think it's interesting that they chose to go with a rock arrangement, but it's also very fitting for their storyline because like the backstage storyline, the whole like coolness of it or whatever is really associated with like rock stars for the most part. So it all tracks. So besides the electric guitar though, like another thing for the rock arrangement that right away I was like, oh my gosh, they put that in, is right as the doors are opening before they go on stage, you start hearing like a stomp stomp clap thing, and I was like, this is the "We Will Rock You" stomp stomp clap that literally everyone knows. You were talking about how like it's very clear each of the members has their own like image in this rock group that they've created for this performance, and one of them that was like super clear, highlighted by the music change as well, is Minhyuk's, because when you first are introduced to him for his first part, the vibe of the song completely changes from like the more rock style that you've been hearing to sort of like a hip-hop, like lots of reverb. There's like the sort of hazy feeling in the instrumental, and like the beat becomes different as well, more like trap beaty-esque. And that's also highlighted even more with like visually what you're seeing, because instead of the yellow lights of Changsub and Eunkwang's waiting rooms, the lights in Minhyuk's reflecting off of the color of the walls of his waiting room is like this blue purple hue, which is usually associated with that feeling. And then also B2B, obviously they have wonderful background vocals and just vocals in general, but like their stages have a lot of wonderful background vocals in it too. One that really stuck out to me was the transition from Minhyuk's second part into Eunkwang's. Honestly, it's not super interesting because during Minhyuk's second part, it's just been like this sort of ooh happening in the background, but the transition into Eunkwang's, they add another note above it, and it's just an interval of a second, so it's like do to re, and that's really off-putting when you hear them together because they're like so close, they're like rubbing against each other, so it's like, oh, what's happening, before it leads into Eunkwang's. Anyways, I love this. Okay, next.
Okay, so for the last performance today, we will be watching Stray Kids do their version of BTOB's Kido, I'll Be Your Man. That's the title, Kido, I'll Be Your Man, Stray Kids version. Let's go! This is a really heavy topic, like the story that they've chosen to address, so I know our reactions weren't like over the top, like but like the story they're telling is so heavy. It's like heaven and hell and sacrifice, and I felt like it would be inappropriate. Leading from that, I guess my only sort of like ashiwo comment, I'll be totally honest, I don't totally get the story from start to finish. Like, I know they're making a lot of references, and I think that's one thing about the Skiz performances is they're very strategized and they make all of these very like intelligent references, but when I'm watching it, I'm not automatically like, oh, that's what that is. However, I will say the emotions that they were portraying and the way they were like showing the feelings on stage, even if I didn't hanyak not yummy even if I wasn't getting every single reference, I was able to follow the like overall story arc, and I felt the story. Like they were making me feel the story through it. So it's a little bit of give and take. Maybe I'm just not smart enough. This is just like a throwing out there comment because again, like we haven't watched the show yet. Like I don't know how other groups or like other fans of other groups have reacted to this. But I was wondering if people were shocked by Han. Jisung is a rapper and he's known for his rapping and being part of Sriracha. And I feel like so far, even though he's sung a little bit in their past stages, he's really showcased his rapping more than his singing. And so I wonder if people were like, wait, what? He's a rapper? Because he was featured as one of like the main vocalists in this song because he can hit those notes. One of my favorite moments in the whole performance, Anna's gonna laugh at me, it was the tiniest moment, and I don't even think most people would like realize it, but during Changbin's first rap, there's a part where he like runs to the side and he sort of like looks and the dancers follow him and they're built around him. His back leg is extended and his foot is pointed. I almost like shrieked, but then I was like, that's inappropriate for what's happening in this storyline. But oh my gosh, it's just such a beautiful moment because it continues the line and it makes it feel more longing because it feels like you're being held back by something. Thank you, So Changbin. That's what I've been asking for. Something else that I really enjoyed is how they were taking advantage, and they did this in round 1 too, but I felt like it was more prominent here, taking advantage of Felix's really deep voice and how it contrasts with his like very sweet image. I feel like they're really able to show that like dichotomy of good and evil that they're showing through the stage just through Felix, which I think is why he's featured in the center of so much of this. Oh my gosh, like especially after that effect that they put on his voice after the sacrifice moment when the demon is behind him and he's talking about like heaven has abandoned you and all this stuff. I was like, okay, Felix. But also, I really liked the use of contemporary style and floor work in this because those are styles that are associated with more emotional moments and like kind of an outpour of emotion, and so it felt very fitting for the concept and the story that they're telling. And then also from like a general like higher level perspective, they're talking about praying, like kido, isn't that like roughly translating to pray or something?
It directly translates to
pray. Listen, my church Korean is not great, so like obviously imagery of being on your knees, that's like the prayer imagery. And then final comment, wow, I talked for a really long time. I felt like the strongest part of this performance was the stage pictures that they had, because there were so many and they were so emotional. Like they really sold the story. Like a couple that stuck out to me, Jisung falling to his knees when I said, oh, that was really good timing, and how it like matched the music in front of the statue at the beginning, or Felix on the altar, or just the scenes with the young boy, like when he and Changbin are like looking at each other, and then at the end when he's hugging Bangchan, that like broke my heart. I thought I was gonna start crying. So that really portrayed the like story. Anna's turn.
Hi, so for my comments about this performance, I'm just gonna get my slightly Ashura thing out of the way. Same as Peyton's, but like, also with Peyton, I get the emotion that they're conveying, and also the song itself that they chose to do is so emotional. The arrangement that they made of the song still has that same like really dramatic, deep, very serious emotion, but their arrangement adds like a haunting feeling to it, which like the whole heaven versus hell and like all of that stuff, it makes sense. Especially like right off the bat, you get that haunting feeling because it's just someone in silence singing by himself, and then the next thing you see is the statue at someone's grave. But for that haunting feeling musically, one thing is that they play with silence a lot in this. More so than silence, the way that I'm thinking of it in this performance is the absence of sound. It's like the absence of sound, and in their storyline, it's like the absence of this person. Like when you go from a fuller sounding section where there's like other instruments happening to the absence of it, and then there's like just maybe a bass line instead. Go back to Innie's first part, there's just like the bass hits, the really deep grounded ones that sound kind of distorted. That contrast is very jarring. And they have a lot of that, like you were talking even about like Felix himself. More things about the haunting feeling in their arrangement. Like obviously there are sections where you'll hear a lot of strings. They also have when they're in like the hell sections with the devil demon, that arrangement, it's a lot darker, more grounded. But in the background, more so than the strings that I thought were interesting, I can't tell if it's like a synth or not. It also could be like sung voices. If it's sung voices, I think that's more interesting. I mean, there's also like synth MIDI settings for like choral voice. Those exist, so it might be one of those, but it's like the choir singing that I did in high school with like the very rounded vowels. If you're singing an ooh instead of like a ooh, it's like a ooh, like that. It's much more haunting, which is very fitting for this performance. And then the finale section of the performance where it's like all the lines over each other, like overlapping. It's like in the original song, this outpour of emotion and sort of chaos of emotions and feelings that you're overwhelmed with. It's like rapping, harmonized voices, a different vocal line also happening, and then another one happening. I like how they carried that over from the original. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about was sort of to address something. I have a feeling that this is what it's about because like yesterday, Mnet had released a YouTube video prior to the episode being out, and the thumbnail was of Innie crying. So I'm assuming it was about the voice crack that happens in that like finale section of the performance. I'll be completely honest, I don't think that that's a big deal. I don't think it took away from the performance at all. Other people on Kingdom so far have had voice cracks, and like more noticeable ones than that, and it hasn't really taken away from the performance. Initially I was like, oh, it's probably just like adding to the outpour of emotions. It sounded like a cry out, or like you're so choked up with emotions, so the sound for that word came like half a beat late. TLDR, not a big deal. But I know that he's probably sad about it, so feel better. Know that it wasn't a big deal and it really didn't retract from the performance. Yeah, okay. That's all I have to say.
Alright, so TLDR is round 2 is officially over, and we have now seen all 6 performances for the Reborn Challenge, where the groups paired up and switched and then remade the songs into their own style. Like last week, these performances were fantastic, over the top, like really, really fulfilled the assignment very, very well. And we're just constantly amazed at how every group is continuing to outdo themselves, and we can't wait to see what they do next. Although next week is like the field day, so we're not really sure what we'll be doing.
We'll get back to you on it.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do like a halfway point video. Maybe we'll just react to them in the field day clips. Who knows? But that being said, if you enjoyed this reaction video, also have been loving these Kingdom performances, and also want to share your thoughts in the comments down below, but reminder to be respectful like we said in the beginning, then do so. Also like this video, please. Maybe subscribe and or turn on your notification bell. And bye!